Hello. I'm very grateful to stand here. 2 years ago, I could not have stood here. Grateful for those of you who've been on this journey with me from wheelchair back to hands that work, back to a voice that does not quiver. Thank you. Mark Strand wrote, "The attendance of stones, nor the applauding wind shall let you know you have arrived, nor the sea that celebrates only departures, nor the mountains, nor the dying cities. Nothing will tell you where you are. Each moment is a place you've never been. But how will you know? How will you know?" This question, how will I know, is the portal from which I enter this discussion today. I'm from every place I've ever been: marketplaces, mountains, sugarcane fields, rivers, Switzerland, kitchens, museums, Germany, Panama, Brazil, California, the Virgin Islands, juke joints and roadhouses, liquor houses and discos, Texas, Jamaica, Georgia, Florida, Virginia, West Virginia, South Carolina, New York, New Jersey, France, Italy, libraries, graveyards, factories, to Maine, Pennsylvania, brush arbors, birthing rooms, slave quarters, Minnesota, cathedrals, sweat lodges, gardens and oceans and rivers, mosques and churches, farms, Tennessee, Wisconsin, secret borders, safe houses, and yada, 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 yada. How did I know that I'd been there? Place and space, the transference of stories from where I've been to where I am about to go, or where I am going, represent a particular life force in my poems. I wrote Swiss Time, a poem about my grandmother's death. My grandmother died in the 1970s, in early 1970. But I wrote the poem in the late 80s on a train traveling through the Swiss Alps. Some of my work has required much distance from home. Much distance where other landscapes have enabled me to conjure or bring forth the voices or the memories that I needed to hear. I have fled space and place in order to return. I find familiarity and a sense of genetic deja vu in every place I visit. I have traveled to research sites that I did not know would hold some kind of emotional resonance that would trigger creative responses through memory, sensory perceptions. Genetic deja vu, or genetic memories. They might be explained scientifically through DNA transfer. We have the DNA of our ancestors in our genetic makeup. These memories may surface for many of us as anything. For me, they surface strongly when I am unknowingly on property once owned by my ancestors. The ground, the trees, the rocks all speak. The stories walk. This has been a lifetime journey, understanding the genetic code that causes me much sorrow and uncontrollable crying, walking through a square in Bahia, Salvador. A square called Pelourinho. In Portuguese, Pelourinho means to plunder and to pillage. Pelourinho is a square facing a large Catholic church. As we know, Catholic churches were still financing slave cargoes with the Portuguese, bringing their human merchandise through the catacombs of the church that backed right up to this square. In the wee hours of morning, they'd march their human merchandise into the square, which was a slave market. Slaves shackled in the square. Wood, iron bars, remnants still there. I could smell the blood. The invisible dust and stench choked me. I would have similar reactions at Stagville Plantation in Durham, the main street of Harper's Ferry, Charleston, South Carolina, places of collective sufferance. For weeks I cried whenever I was close to that square in Brazil. One day I asked questions that led to poems. I have many stories about many places that have triggered genetic memories. My favorite is, as a child, I continually asked my mother about a particular tall French parlor door that I loved to play with, the glass or knobs. I knew that house, but could not remember where the house was. I thought we'd lived there once upon a time. I would tell my mom how I liked staring into the prisms that held such beautiful light. She told me, I know those doors. They were the doors in my grandmother's house when she was a child, but the house and the doors were long gone before your birth. I played constantly with the glass door knobs, said my mother. I never believed her as a child. I thought it was me. Genetic deja vu. Segregated Rainbows is another poem I wrote sitting on the porch of an antebellum B&B in South Carolina, to later find out that my white and black ancestors loved fiercely close by beneath a sky of secret confederacy. I have written much work abroad, and while in Brazil, utilize the offerings of genetic deja vu when reading my poetry, having it translated only to find there was confusion about some Southern or colloquial term. Finding the codes in the other cultures, the similarities, the ties that bind. The nuance of how a sister holds a baby on her hip in Savannah, Georgia, linked to how a sister holds a baby on her hip in a rainforest in Central America. Getting lost driving through the Italian Alps wearing a headscarf to be rescued by 4 tiny crones. Italian women who looked as old as the mountain, wearing bright kerchiefs on their heads. Our tongues foreign to each other, but the soulful language of our stories were tied inside our scarves. They were anxious to untie from my head the scarf and from their own heads the scarves, speaking in historical signs and codes, ancient woman code that resonated all the way back to my mothers of the South. I am from everywhere I've ever been. A student once said this to me in a class when I asked, where are you from? I'm from everywhere I've ever been. Lee Smith used to sit beside me, and we'd listen to these long introductions of people, and Lee would always say, but who is people? Where are you from? Who is people? So I've come to understand that I write what I pick up wherever I am. And sometimes that's about a grandmother in the Deep South, but told to me through the lenses of a grandmother in a rainforest in Central America. I think that when I listen to the stories of the other Confederacy, being the other daughter of the Confederacy, there are many stories and many grounds that I still have to travel in this South. But I'm not always available to write that pain, to write that collective amnesia, but to escape it in order to come back to it. So this piece I wrote about the black and white ancestors, we talk about place and traveling to other geographies. My grandmother always had a picture of this white man sitting on a piano in the living room. And as a child, I would ask many questions, and nobody would ever answer the questions. But being the nosy person that I was, I finally came to find out who he was. He was my great-grandfather, an Irishman. Segregated Rainbows, 1. 1932, somewhere over the South Carolina border, a yellow dress becomes canvas, witness to colorless dreams that appear beneath my grandmother's smile. Standing together under protective, moonless, starless sky, blonde and black hair touching daring the air, daring oceans between them. My grandparents clasp hands, stare into the invisible lens of an invisible camera. They stare straight ahead into an erect future. Cross burnings, slashed tires, backyard clotheslines torched, dead cats hurled through windows. 2. 1953, I am born, granddaughter, the color of coral, ripened peaches, brown hair that rolls up into little rivers. I enter this world carrying grandmother's birthmark, the same arrow pointing east inside her left thigh. I grow my father's smile when I cry. I grow the gray stone wolf eyes of grandfather. When I am 7, my tears teach me grandfather's language. 2. I grow into the arrow inside my left thigh. I grow hair, breast for the wind's daughter. I grow hips, teeth for the moon's wife. 4. I become the yellow dress, patched, blood-stained, hidden. I become the ground somewhere over the South Carolina border, receiving their dance, their prayer. I become blonde, black hair bleeding together. I become their hands loving in and out of season. I become their land, fertilized by miscarried, aborted ashes. I am the life they could not birth, they could not name, nor not call home. 5. My grandmother teaches me other languages: archery, piano, ballet, seduction, rivalry. My mother teaches me to be her, not become the arrow inside my left thigh. She demands that I cease walking, talking with wolves. 6. Grandfather's obituary did not mention my grandmother as his wife, my mother as his daughter, my uncle as his son. The crinkled, worn news clipping chronicles and keeps the evidence of your memories. The smell of antique leather, expensive cigars, expensive smiles. Collections of leather-bound books, photo albums, bank portfolios. New jazz brews inside of you like chocolate wrapping licorice sticks. 7. I am the crying wolf, warrior without tribe. My inkwell spills dust-coated ink, meant for a hidden canvas, moth-eaten, evicting shadows of another likeness, another moth-eaten revenge. 8. I become sword of the grandfather, become another trophy, memory, Persian rooms, satin afternoons, tea biscuits, polite assassinations, sexual innuendos, piano recitals, lullabies, waltz, and proper chairs. I am the granddaughter, witness to the incest of rain and snow, witness to this betrayal of rainbows. 9. We bury yellow dresses, deeds, birth certificates. We bury swords, teeth, segregated deaths. We bury questions, reprisals, birthrights. 10. Every morning, the wolf visits my yard, and I remember to feed him. So there are borders, many, many borders on this global stage that I call my stage as a North Carolina writer, and I am happy to claim that stage. Thank you. So I've been asked to pay tribute to Dr. Maya Angelou, which is very difficult, because Sister Maya had a way with words, a presence, a commanding command that invited all of us. A brave and startling truth, dedicated to the hope for peace which lies sometimes hidden in every heart, by Dr. Maya Angelou. We, this people, on a small and lonely planet, traveling through casual space, past aloof stars, across the way of indifferent suns, to a destination where all signs tell us it is possible and imperative that we learn a brave and startling truth. And when we come to it, to the day of peacemaking, when we release our fingers from fist of hostility and allow the pure air to cool our palms, when we come to it, when the curtain falls on the minstrel show of hate and faces sooted with scorn are scrubbed clean, when battlefields and coliseum no longer rake our unique and particular sons and daughters up with the bruised and bloodied grass, to lie in identical plots in foreign soil. When the rapacious storming of the churches, the screaming racket in the temples have ceased, when the pennants are waving gaily, when the banners of the world tremble stoutly in the good, clean breeze, when we come to it, when we let the rifles fall from our shoulders and children dress their dolls in flags of truce, when landmines of death have been removed and the aged can walk into evenings of peace, when religious ritual is not perfumed by the incense of burning flesh, and childhood dreams are not kicked awake by nightmares of abuse. When we come to it, then we will confess that not the pyramids with their stones set in mysterious perfection, nor the gardens of Babylon hanging as eternal beauty in our collective memory, not the Grand Canyon kindled into delicious color by western sunsets, nor the Danube flowing its blue soul into Europe, not the sacred peak of Mount Fuji stretching to the rising sun, neither Father Amazon nor Mother Mississippi, who without favor nurture all creatures in the depths and on the shores. These are not the only wonders of the world. When we come to it, we, this people, on this minuscule and kifless globe, who reach daily for the bomb, the blade, and the dagger, yet who petition in the dark for tokens of peace. We, this people, on this mote of matter, in whose mouths abide cankerous words which challenge our very existence. Yet out of those same mouths come songs of such exquisite sweetness that the heart falters in its labor and the body is quieted into awe. We, this people, on this small and drifting planet, whose hands can strike with such abandon that in a twinkling life is sapped from the living. Yet those same hands can touch with such healing, irresistible tenderness, that the haughty neck is happy to bow, and the proud back is glad to bend. Out of such chaos, of such contradiction, we learn that we are neither devils nor divines. When we come to it, we, this people, on this wayward, floating body, created on this earth, of this earth, have the power to fashion for this earth a climate where every man and every woman can live freely without sanctimonious piety, without crippling fear. When we come to it, we must confess that we are the possible. We are the miraculous, the true wonder of this world. That is when, and only when, we come to it. Grateful to Sister Maya for these words at this time that we bow our heads for the reverence of people suffering throughout this world. Thank you.